Leighton Vale wasn't supposed to be at the West Haven Country Club that afternoon, especially not dressed in a tux he'd borrowed from his driver, but crashing weddings had become an accidental habit ever since his brother got married, and he realized how much he hated being alone. So when he saw the crowd gathering outside the ivy-covered stone chapel, he followed them in like he belonged there. He didn't expect to lock eyes with the bride. She wasn't walking down the aisle, though she was walking out of the back door. Fast. Her white heels clicked against the marble like gunshots, bouquet clenched like a weapon, the veil tangled in her curls. And her face. That wasn't the face of a woman about to marry the love of her life. She looked like she was running for her life. Leighton didn't think. He followed her. "Hey," he called, catching up just as she stormed past a row of topiary animals shaped like swans. "You okay?" She spun, startled, eyes blazing. "Do I look okay?" "No," he said honestly. She blinked. "Are you with the groom?" "Nope, I'm not supposed to be here at all." That made her pause. "You crashed the wedding." "Technically, I crashed the reception. I was promised cake." For the first time, her expression cracked, not a smile but close. "Well, there's plenty of cake, and a groom who just confessed he slept with my cousin at his bachelor party." Leighton's brows rose. "Yikes. Yup." She yanked off her veil and tossed it over a bush. "So I'm not marrying him." "Good," he said without hesitation. She looked at him, really looked at him. "Who are you?" "Leighton Vale." "And you are Marlowe James." He extended his hand like they were meeting at a dinner party instead of mid-wedding meltdown. "Nice to meet you, Marlowe." She stared at his hand and then shook it, laughter bubbling from her chest. "This is insane." "Well," he said, glancing over his shoulder as shouting started near the chapel, "might get more insane in a second." Marlowe followed his gaze. The groom, tall, angry, and red-faced, had emerged, flanked by a furious mother of the bride and a few concerned guests. "Do you want to get out of here?" Leighton asked. Marlowe didn't hesitate. "Yes. God, yes." He took her hand and ran. They made it to the parking lot, ducked behind a Bentley, his, though she didn't know it yet, and burst into breathless laughter. "You're really not with the wedding?" she asked again. "Nope, I was just bored." She gave him a long look. "That's the most expensive boredom I've ever seen." Leighton shrugged, opening the passenger door for her. "Get in." "You just met me. You just left your wedding." "We're both doing things we're not supposed to." She hesitated for half a second before sliding in. He drove fast and quiet for a moment, letting the wind rush through the open windows. Then she asked, "So, what do you do when you're not crashing weddings?" "I run a real estate company." "Vale Properties," her eyes flicked to him. "Wait, you're that Vale?" He nodded. "As in the guy who just bought that whole block in Midtown and made it into a rooftop garden mall, guilty?" Marlowe sat back, stunned. "You're a millionaire," Leighton grinned. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "No," she said slowly. "It's just, you don't act like it." "Well, you don't act like someone who was about to marry the wrong guy." She shifted, looking out the window. "I wasn't. I knew exactly what I was doing. I just didn't have the guts to stop it until he gave me a reason." "What would have happened if he hadn't?" "I'd be Mrs. Carter Blaine by now," she whispered. "Living someone else's life." Leighton glanced at her. "So what now, Marlowe, not Mrs. Blaine?" She turned to him. "I don't know." "I really don't." He pulled into a quiet overlook above the city and parked. The skyline shimmered beneath them, gold and steel and sunset fire. "Then let's figure it out," he said. She tilted her head. "Why are you being so nice to me?" "Because you look like you needed someone to be." Marlowe stared at him for a long moment. "You ever do something completely insane just because it felt right?" He met her gaze. "Today or in general?" "Today," he laughed softly. "Yeah. I think I'm doing that right now." She smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. He reached into the back seat and pulled forward a black bag, unzipping it to reveal a change of clothes. "You want out of that dress?" She blinked. "What? I can take you somewhere better." "But you'll be a little overdressed." Marlowe hesitated. "You always carry a spare outfit in your car." "I had a meeting this morning. Didn't want to wear the same thing to a wedding I wasn't invited to." She shook her head, amused. "You're ridiculous." "And you're gorgeous," he said simply. She didn't respond. Her cheeks flushed. 10 minutes later, they were walking into a quiet rooftop restaurant in Tribeca. No reservation, no wait. The hostess didn't even blink when she saw Leighton. "Mr. Vale," she said with a nod. Marlowe looked at him. "You really are the guy." He pulled her chair out for her. "Told you." Dinner was warm bread, grilled sea bass, and laughter real, easy laughter that made her forget she'd been crying only hours ago. "So what do you want to do now?" he asked after dessert. She leaned back, eyes on the city lights. "I want to feel like I made a choice, not like I ran," he nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Then make the next one count." She looked at him. "You offering yourself up as the next choice?" Leighton didn't flinch. "Yeah. I think I am." Marlowe stared at him like she didn't quite believe him, but she wanted to, and for the first time in a long time, she just might say yes. The next morning, Marlowe woke to the hush of floor-to-ceiling curtains filtering golden light into a suite that did not belong to her. High above the city, the air was still, the silence soft except for the distant hum of traffic far below. She sat up slowly, sheets slipping from her shoulders, and reached for the silk robe folded neatly on the chaise. She hadn't meant to stay. But after dessert turned into champagne and stories turned into a late-night ride through the city with the wind in her hair and Leighton beside her, she hadn't wanted to go back to her apartment, or anywhere familiar. Not yet. The robe, like everything else in the penthouse, was elegant without trying. She didn't need to check the label to know it cost more than her weekly paycheck at the gallery. The gallery she would now have to return to with a new name or no name at all. "Marlowe," came Leighton's voice from the adjacent room. "You're up." She turned to find him leaning in the doorway. He'd changed into a charcoal sweater and dark jeans, barefoot, a coffee mug in one hand. His hair was still damp from a shower, and the scent of fresh espresso drifted toward her. "I'm sorry," she said, adjusting the robe. "I didn't mean to crash here." "You didn't crash. You were invited." "I didn't realize your apartment was a rooftop fortress," she said, nodding toward the skyline. "This place is." "Excessive," he offered. "I was going to say cinematic," he grinned. "Came with the company. I used to live in a 2-bedroom over a deli in Queens." She walked to the window, arms folded. "This feels like a dream I'm going to wake up from and go straight back to answering emails about broken frames." "You don't have to go back to anything you don't want." She turned toward him, startled. "You don't even know me. I know enough to see you were suffocating in a life that didn't fit. And you think running off with a stranger in a tux is the solution. I think sometimes strangers see you clearer than people who have known you forever." Marlowe considered him for a long moment. "You always talk like that, only when I haven't had enough sleep." He walked over and handed her the coffee. Their fingers brushed, and she felt it again, that strange, electric awareness. "So what's the plan?" she asked. "There's an art fair in Montauk today, private event. I have an invite." "Thought maybe you'd want to come," she blinked. "Montauk? I have a helicopter. We'll be there in 30 minutes. She stared at him. "I know," he said. "It's ridiculous, but the view's good and the food's better." Marlowe hesitated only a second. "All right. Let's go." By the time they reached the helipad, the city had shaken off its early quiet. The wind tugged at her hair as they lifted into the sky, slicing through clouds like a knife through silk. Leighton didn't speak much on the flight. He just watched the horizon, a small crease between his brows. "You always look that serious when you're flying," she asked. "I'm thinking about how easily something unexpected can change everything." She didn't respond. The fair was held on the grounds of a private estate overlooking the sea. Marlowe stepped out of the chopper and into a world of curated hedges, glass sculptures, and women in wide-brimmed hats holding champagne flutes like scepters. A man in a navy linen suit approached them as they walked through the gates. "Leighton Vale," he said, extending a hand. "Didn't think you'd show." "Ben, good to see you," Leighton said. "This is Marlowe." Ben's eyes flicked to her, curiosity sharp. "New client," something like that, Leighton said smoothly. Ben raised a brow but said nothing. "We've got a few pieces downstairs you might want to see." The collector from Tokyo backed out last minute, Leighton nodded. We'll take a look. As they moved through the gallery, Marlowe found herself drawn to a small watercolor tucked behind a larger installation. The colors were muted, the brushstrokes delicate but precise. She leaned in. "That's a piece by Elise Varn," said a voice beside her. She turned to see a woman in a slate-gray dress watching her. "I didn't think anyone noticed it. Most people walk right past. It's the only one that doesn't feel like it's trying too hard," Marlowe said. The woman smiled faintly. "You have a good eye." Leighton appeared then. "Elise, this is Marlowe." Understanding dawned in Marlowe's mind. "You're the artist," Elise nodded. "And you're not from this world, are you?" Marlowe stiffened, but Elise's tone wasn't unkind. "No," she admitted. "Not really?" "Then don't let it shape you." "It'll try, but hold your line." Leighton watched the exchange with interest as Elise disappeared into the crowd. "I like her," Marlowe said. "She's one of the few people here who actually say what they mean." They walked outside as the wind picked up, salt and rosemary on the breeze. Leighton stopped near the cliff's edge and turned to her. "I want to show you something." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Marlowe stared. "That better not be what I think it is." He opened it. Inside was a simple gold ring, not flashy, not dramatic, just honest. "I know this is fast," he said, "and crazy, but I don't want you to go back to a life that isn't yours. I don't want you to disappear into a world that'll never see you. I want to give you a choice that's yours." She stared at the ring. "You want me to marry you, I want you to stop running. And maybe start something real." She shook her head. "You don't even know what I want." "Then tell me," he said. "Tell me right now." She looked out at the sea, wind tugging at her robe, the weight of the ring box between them. "I want to be seen. I want to be brave. And I want something that doesn't feel like pretending." He stepped closer. "Then say yes." Marlowe met his eyes, and for the first time she didn't feel like she was falling. She felt like she was choosing. Marlowe didn't say yes, not right away. She didn't take the ring either. She just looked at Leighton with something unreadable in her expression, then turned away from the cliffs and walked back toward the estate. He didn't follow her immediately. He gave her space. That was the first time anyone had ever offered her something permanent and meant it. And she wasn't used to meaning things herself, not with men, not with decisions, not with anything that might end in fire. Her whole life had been built on compromise and patience, saying yes when she wanted to scream and staying when she should have walked. So she walked now, not away. Just to breathe. She found a garden tucked behind the estate, wild and unmanicured, with lavender climbing over the stone wall and bees humming like they didn't care about broken engagements or impulsive ring boxes. She sat on a bench that looked like no one had used it in years. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from wanting something she didn't know how to want. Footsteps approached, measured, deliberate. She didn't look up. "You've gone quiet," Leighton said, not sitting, just standing a few feet away. "I needed a second," she murmured. "I figured." She finally glanced at him. "You really meant it? The ring?" "I don't carry around engagement rings for sport," he said. "I don't do things halfway." She exhaled through her nose, tension rippling in her shoulders. "You don't know what you're inviting into your life. I have a board of directors who threaten lawsuits if my coffee's late, and an estranged father who tried to sue me for emotional distress after I bought the company he lost in a poker game. Trust me, I've seen chaos." She tilted her chin toward him, curious. "Your father tried to sue you for outmaneuvering him. He lost the business before I even graduated. I bought it back 3 years later." He didn't appreciate the irony. "Did you?" Leighton's mouth curved, but not into a smile. "No, I just appreciated the closure." Marlowe's fingers traced the edge of the bench. "And your mother?" "She left when I was 9. Some guy in Spain. I haven't heard her voice since." She nodded slowly. "So you're used to people disappearing." "I'm used to people giving up." Silence stretched between them, thick with things neither had said yet. "I don't want to be someone you rescue," she said finally. "I don't want to be a detour from your real life." "You're not a detour." His voice was low. "You're the first thing that's made sense in months." He sat beside her then, careful not to touch her. "I was going through the motions, deals, stocks, properties I'll never step foot in. And then you walked out of that chapel like you were on fire and I couldn't look away. I don't even know what I want from tomorrow, she said, voice rough. Then let's not talk about tomorrow, he said. Let's talk about tonight. She turned toward him, cautious. What about it? I'm hosting a benefit dinner at the Marquette Hotel, Art and Restoration Fund. The mayor will be there. So will half of Manhattan's most unbearable people. Come with me. As your date, as the woman who made me forget I hated parties. She hesitated. Do I have to wear pearls and pretend I went to boarding school? No, you have to show up as you. That's the only thing I'm interested in. She met his eyes. What if I say no? Then I'll go alone and spend the night wishing I hadn't. Marlowe stood, brushing her hands on her skirt. All right. I'll go, he rose too. There's a boutique in East Hampton that owes me a favor. I'll have them open early. You're buying me a dress. I'm asking you to walk into a room full of sharks. The least I can do is make sure you have armor. She didn't argue. By the time sunset dipped the sky in copper, they were back in the city. The boutique was minimalist and silent, the kind of place without price tags. Leighton waited outside the fitting area while Marlowe stepped carefully into a gown offered by a woman who spoke only in murmurs. The dress fit like it was stitched for her alone, sleek, off the shoulder with a trail of silk that whispered against the floor. She stepped out. Leighton looked up from his phone, and for a second the room stilled. You're not real, he said under his breath. Marlowe lifted a brow. You say that to all the women you dress. You're the first I've ever taken shopping. She studied him. You don't date much, do you? I date women who want my portfolio more than my attention. I spend most of my nights at meetings or fundraisers. I don't remember the last time I was with someone who made me laugh. Marlowe turned toward the mirror, watching his reflection in it. You're either very lonely or very good at pretending not to be. Maybe both. She didn't respond. An hour later, they stepped out of a black car onto the red carpet entrance of the Marquette. Cameras flashed. Reporters angled for quotes. Leighton held her hand like it was the only thing tethering him to the ground. Inside, the ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and 100 conversations stitched with power. Waiters floated by with silver trays. A string quartet hummed beneath it all. Marlowe stayed close to his side, not because she needed protection, but because the room was watching. And she wasn't used to being the center of anything. A man in a navy suit approached, older, sharp-eyed. His voice was clipped. Leighton, I see you've brought a guest. This is Marlowe James, Leighton said, calm. She's with me. The man's gaze flicked to her, assessing. James. Any relation to the Westfield Gallery? My uncle owns it, she replied, chin lifting. His face shifted slightly, interest peaked. Then perhaps we'll talk later. He moved on. Marlowe turned to Leighton. That was a test. They're all tests you passed. She scanned the room. You hate this, don't you? I used to thrive on it. Now, it feels like noise. She touched his sleeve. Then let's make noise of our own. He looked down at her, something sparking in his eyes, and for the first time that night he smiled. The ballroom doors closed behind them with a soft hush, but the air inside the private suite on the top floor of the Marquette was anything but quiet. Marlowe stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at a city that had somehow become unrecognizable in the span of a week. The lights below blinked like 1,000 decisions waiting to be made, and Leighton stood behind her, silent, the ring box back in his hand. I didn't bring it to pressure you, he said. Marlowe didn't turn around. Then why did you bring it? Because I needed to know if I was crazy. She glanced at his reflection in the glass, his expression unreadable. And I still might be, but I'm done pretending I'm not in this. She faced him fully now. You don't even know what I want out of life. I don't need a blueprint, just a direction. If you tell me where your heart's pointing, I'll follow it. She walked toward him slowly. I'm not used to people following me. Then maybe it's time someone did. Marlowe reached out and closed the box in his hand. I don't want a ring right now. His jaw tightened just slightly, but he didn't step back. I want more than a moment. I want to know this isn't just adrenaline and champagne and running from something else. I need to know that if I say yes, it's because I'm running towards something I chose. Leighton nodded once. What do you need to see? I want to see your world, the real one. Not the rooftop dinners and private jets. I want to see the pressure, the stakes, the things that make you fight. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Tomorrow morning, I'm meeting with the board of Vale Properties. They've been circling to push me into a merger with an international investment group. Short-term profit, long-term nightmare. I've been holding the line alone. She crossed her arms. Then I want to be there, he blinked. You want to sit in on a board meeting? I want to see how you move when the world isn't charmed by you. Leighton gave a short laugh. You might be the first person who's ever asked for that. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for truth. The next morning was gray, the kind of gray that made the streets feel older than they were. Inside Vale Properties' glass tower, the boardroom on the 38th floor gleamed like a surgical theater. 12 men and women sat around a polished walnut table, their expressions honed sharp from years of deals and betrayals. Leighton walked in with Marlowe beside him, her hair pulled back, wearing a navy blazer and quiet confidence. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The room reacted anyway. "Who's this?" asked a man with silver temples and a voice like ice. "My guest," Leighton replied, taking his seat at the head of the table. "We're not discussing her. We're discussing the Eastline merger," a woman to his left cut in. "And your continued resistance. You mean my refusal to sell the company to vultures who'll gut the community projects and outsource every job we've created in the last 5 years?" His tone was casual, but his eyes were knives. "It's a sound financial play," the man insisted. "For who?" Leighton asked. "Not for the families in Brooklyn we just moved into clean housing, not for the local contractors we promised 5-year partnerships." Marlowe watched, silent but rapt. He wasn't charming. He was relentless, focused. Every word calculated not to impress but to protect. When the meeting ended, the air was tense, but no one had won. Not yet. In the elevator, Leighton leaned against the wall. "Well, you didn't blink," Marlowe said. "I never do in that room." "I saw the fight." He looked at her. And she stepped closer. "And I'm not afraid of it." That night, there was no gala, no glittering ballroom. Just the two of them, barefoot in his kitchen, eating takeout from paper containers, jazz playing low from a speaker tucked beside a stack of old books. Marlowe sat on the counter, watching him pour wine. "I was supposed to be someone else," she said. "My whole life was curated to fit a narrative: marry well, behave, work quietly, and I was good at it, until I wasn't." Leighton handed her a glass. "You're not someone else. You're exactly who you're meant to be." "It just took the wrong wedding to find the right beginning." She took a sip. "You talk in endings. I talk in certainty." Marlowe set the glass down. "Then be certain now." He stepped between her knees, hands resting lightly on her thighs. "I want this, not because it's easy, but because it's real." She leaned forward, forehead touching his. "Then ask me again." He didn't move. "Are you ready?" "Yes." He pulled the box from his back pocket again. No grand speech, no crowd. Just two people standing in the ashes of what almost happened, daring to build something new. He opened it. Marlowe took the ring this time, slid it on herself, her eyes never left his. "I'm not running anymore," she whispered. Leighton kissed her like an answer. They married 3 days later, not in a chapel. Not with swans carved in ice or violins playing Vivaldi. They stood on the balcony of his penthouse at midnight, with the city lights as their witness and Elise Varn, the artist herself, officiating in a black jumpsuit and unapologetic eyeliner. The vows were simple. No promises of perfection. Just a pact to choose each other every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Later that night, as the skyline blinked around them and the wind curled through the open doors, Marlowe lay beside him, her hand resting over his heart. "You still think crashing that wedding was a mistake?" she asked. Leighton laughed, quiet and full. "It was the smartest thing I've ever done." Rain softened the edges of the world outside the penthouse windows, tapping lightly against the glass as if the city itself had decided to stop and breathe. Inside, Marlowe sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by sheets of sketch paper, photographs, and fabric swatches. Her hands were streaked with charcoal, and a faint crease had settled between her brows as she studied a half-finished concept board. Leighton leaned against the doorway, tie loosened, watching her in silence. "You've been at that for hours," he said. She didn't look up. "Because it finally feels like it's mine." He walked in, stepping over a roll of canvas to crouch beside her. "Is this for the new gallery?" "It's more than a gallery," she said, brushing hair out of her face. "I want it to be a space where unknown artists can show work without paying for the privilege. No commissions. No gatekeepers." His eyes lingered on her jaw where a smudge of graphite ran like a shadow. "You're building something that matters." She turned to him. "You said I could use the property on Mercer. Did you mean that?" "I signed the transfer this morning. It's yours." Marlowe blinked. "You gave me the deed. You're my wife," he said simply. "And you've got a vision that deserves more than empty applause." She stared at him, still not used to the way he gave without expecting a return. "You know, I used to think love was about compromise. Now it feels like it's about belief. Then believe in yourself as much as I do." She leaned in and kissed him softly, the kind of kiss that didn't need drama or urgency, just presence. When she pulled back, she rested her forehead against his. "I want to open the space with a show," she said. "But not just mine. I want to feature Elise and a few other artists I've met over the years who have been ignored. I'll make sure every collector in the city is there." Marlowe reached for his hand, linking their fingers. "I don't want it to be about money. I want it to be about voice. Then we'll make them listen." The following month was a blur of construction, curation, and long nights filled with creative chaos. Marlowe threw herself into it, and Leighton, despite running a global company, found time to be there, often showing up with takeout and staying until dawn, helping her measure wall space or hang lights. They argued too, over layout, over pacing, over whether the art should be grouped by medium or emotion. But every disagreement ended with laughter or a kiss, or both. The day before the opening, the space transformed. Gone was the hollow shell of the old warehouse. In its place stood Vault, a name Marlowe had chosen carefully for safekeeping, for strength, for the things people tried to bury. The walls were bare brick and steel, the lighting warm and deliberate. Nothing was accidental. Elise arrived early, carrying a wrapped canvas. "This one's new," she said. "Painted it last week." Marlowe unwrapped it and inhaled sharply. It was her, not a portrait, but an impression, bold, raw strokes that captured motion and defiance. She turned to Elise, stunned. "I saw you the day after the wedding," the artist said. "You had that look. Like someone who'd finally stopped apologizing for being loud." Marlowe hugged her tightly. "Thank you." The night of the opening, the gallery filled quickly. Artists, patrons, press. Even Leighton's board showed up, curious and slightly out of place. But no one dared question why the CEO of Vale Properties was pouring wine behind the bar and bragging about his wife's curatorial eye. Marlowe moved through it, all like she was born for it, confident, radiant, exactly who she had always been beneath all the layers of compromise. Near the end of the night, Leighton found her leaning against a pillar, watching a young couple stare at one of the installations with misted eyes. "You did this," he said. She smiled. "We did." He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "They offered me the cover of Business Monthly. I told them no unless they included you," she laughed. "You're serious." "They said they wanted to write about the art of reinvention. I told them you were the expert." She pulled him close, voice low. "I was going to marry a man who didn't even ask what I dreamed about. And now I'm married to a man who helped me build it." A few weeks later, they stood under string lights in the courtyard behind Vault, hosting a closing night party that felt more like family than fanfare. Marlowe wore a linen dress with paint stains on the hem, and Leighton hadn't shaved in 2 days. They danced barefoot for hours, surrounded by laughter and music and people who had come alive inside the space she created. When the last guests left and the night had softened into quiet, they lay on a blanket under the stars, her head on his chest, his arm curled around her. "What now?" she asked. Now we keep building, together. You're not afraid it'll change, I hope it does, he said. As long as we change with it. She looked up at him, eyes steady. You never wanted a simple life, did you? I wanted a real one, and I found it. They kissed there, under the open sky, with no audience, no noise, just two people who had walked through fire and come out holding hands. A year later, Vault expanded into a second location, this time in Chicago. Marlowe took the lead, mentoring artists and helping them find their voice in a world that often tried to silence them. Leighton adjusted his travel schedule to make every opening, every milestone. They bought a brownstone in the West Village, the kind with creaky floors and ivy crawling up the brick, and filled it with everything they were art and coffee cups and late-night ideas scribbled on napkins. On weekends, they hosted dinners for friends who felt like family, and sometimes they danced in the kitchen just because the music was good and the wine was open. They never went back to the chapel where it all began. They didn't need to. Because the life they built was the vow that mattered, and every day, they said yes again.